he was my son. He was born on October 20th, 1819, in the city of Shiraz. From the time he was a baby, I remember thinking that there was something special about him. As a child, he was very serene and had a dignified manner. My husband died when my son was very young, and my brother became his guardian. When it came time for him to go to school, my brother took him. But his teacher brought him back the following day, saying that he had nothing to teach this gifted child. He said, "He stands in no need of a teacher such as I." But my brother was determined that the Bab should continue to go to school, and so he did. As time went on, the schoolmaster became even more convinced of his superior intelligence. He said that he felt that in his relationship to the Bab, he was the one who was being instructed. But my son's intelligence was not the only characteristic that made him stand out from other children. The character of his devotion to God was very unique. He spent a great deal of time praying and was often late for school. Sometimes his teacher, Sheikh Abed, would tell him that a 10-year-old boy did not need to spend so much time praying. The years passed, and when the Bab was 17, he went to Bushehr with his uncle, where he worked as a merchant for 5 years. My brother told me that he won the esteem of all the merchants he worked with because of his honesty and trustworthiness. During that time, he continued to devote a large amount of time to prayer. When the Bab returned from Bushehr, he was 22. I arranged his marriage to our neighbor's daughter, Khadijah. They were perfect for each other. These were happy days indeed. Although I did not understand it, but there seemed to be a change in my son's behavior. I mean, he was always extremely courteous and very mild. But a new radiance seemed to surround him. Other people must have recognized that there was something very special about him too. For many young religious students and scholars came to visit him in the evenings. Before long, I realized that Khadijah was pregnant. In due time, she went into labor, but it was a very difficult labor. And I feared at one point I feared at one point that she was going to die when I hurried to tell my son about the grave condition of my son. He picked up a mirror which was beside him and wrote a prayer on it. He instructed me to hold it in front of Khadija. I did this immediately. And the child was soon born. But his life was short. He was a boy, and the Bab named him Ahmad. When Ahmad died, I was heartbroken and angry at my son. I demanded that he tell me why it was, if he possessed such powers, that he had not attempted to save the life of his own child. He answered very quietly that he was not destined to have any children. It was soon after this that the heart of the storm entered our lives. My son went on pilgrimage, and when he returned, the religious authorities summoned him to the mosque. They told him that he must stop his teaching. After that, we did have a few quiet months before he moved to my brother's house. He told Khadija that it was for our safety that he was leaving us. You know, women were not allowed to be a part of religious affairs in those days, and it was very difficult for us to learn what the religious talk of the day was. I mean, sometimes we heard rumors of his claim to be the promised one, but at the time I personally was not able to investigate it. Soon after the Bab moved to my brother's house, that we heard of his arrest. But it wasn't until a year after his death that we heard of his execution. Putting my son to death had quite the opposite effect hoped for by the authorities. Instead of dimming the light of his sweet and mild personage, his progressive message of reform, equality, and unity spread rapidly throughout Persia. Thousands and thousands of people adhered to the new faith. Amongst them, Sheikh Abed, the Bab's childhood teacher, and Janab Haji Mirza Sayyid Ali, my brother, and the Bab's loving uncle. My son raised the status of women, children, and the poor. He introduced new laws to reform the outdated law of marriage, discouraged polygamy, forbade the need for women to veil themselves, and prohibited the corporal punishment of children. promoted universal education and the study of science. Thoughts and ideas considered radical in a society still steeped in archaic traditions. The Bab sacrificed his life to prepare humanity for the coming of Baha'u'llah, the promised one of all ages.
Justice, we cry for justice. We see it turning, grieving in its time of loss. Justice, lament for justice. The world will give its life for hate, but not for justice. Justice, we cry for justice. We see it turning, grief like a gallowed man. Justice, we cry for justice. The world will give its life for love, but not for justice. Justice, justice. When